The screen flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the dimly lit room. The Galactic Empire's insignia, a jagged silver star encircled by a ring of alien script, filled the display. The broadcast was being transmitted across every channel, every device, every screen on Earth. There was no escaping it. General Marcus Hale stood rigid, his hands clenched behind his back as the scene unfolded. Rows of humans, bound and kneeling, filled the frame. Their faces were a mosaic of fear, defiance, and resignation. The camera panned to reveal the executioners, towering armored figures with faceless helmets and weapons that hummed with unnatural energy. The voice of the Empire's herald, cold and mechanical, echoed through the room. The Galactic Empire does not tolerate defiance. These 50,000 humans have been deemed expendable. Let this serve as a warning to all who would resist. The hum of the weapons crescendoed, and then silence. The screen went black. Hale exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. He turned to the room where a handful of advisors and military personnel sat in stunned silence. "They think they can break us," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. "They think we'll kneel." Dr. Elena Ramirez, seated at a cluttered workstation, pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Her dark eyes were fixed on a tablet where lines of data scrolled endlessly. "They've underestimated us before," she said, her tone clinical but edged with anger. "Their technology is advanced, but it's not infallible. We just need to find the crack in their armor." Hale nodded, his gaze shifting to the young engineer pacing near the window. Lila Chen was barely out of her 20s, her hair tied, back in a messy bun, her hands gesturing animatedly as she muttered to herself, "If we could just... No, wait. What if we..." She stopped abruptly, turning to face the room. "We need to think bigger. They're playing by their rules, but we don't have to. We can outsmart them." Outsmart them. Jake Wildcard Thompson leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "I like it. But let's not forget the fun part, blowing stuff up. I've got a few ideas about how to turn their fancy tech into scrap metal." Hale allowed himself a small smile. Jake was unpredictable, but his knack for improvisation had saved more than one mission. "We'll need all the ideas we can get," he said. "But first we need to rally the world. If we're going to fight, we do it together." The room fell silent as Hale stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He activated the global broadcast system, his face appearing on screens across the planet. "People of Earth," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "Today we witnessed an atrocity. The Galactic Empire believes they can crush us, that we will submit to their tyranny. But they are wrong." He paused, letting his words sink. Humanity is not defined by our weaknesses, but by our ability to adapt, to overcome, to create. We are inventors, dreamers, fighters. We have faced impossible odds before, and we have triumphed. This is no different." The camera zoomed in, capturing the fire in his eyes. "The Empire has shown us their strength. Now, we will show them ours. We will fight, not just for survival, but for justice, for freedom, for the future of our species." The broadcast ended, and the room erupted into action. Dr. Ramirez was already deep in conversation with a team of scientists, her fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. Lila had commandeered a whiteboard, sketching out a design for a new type of spacecraft. Jake was typing furiously on a laptop, his smirk replaced by a look of intense focus. Hale watched them for a moment, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. They were an unlikely team, but they were exactly what humanity needed. He turned to his second-in-command, Colonel Daniels. "Get me everything we have on the Empire's movements. We need to know where they'll strike next." Daniels nodded, already pulling up maps and reports on a nearby screen. "What's the plan, sir?" Hale's expression hardened. "We hit them where it hurts. We show them that humanity doesn't back down." As the team worked through the night, a sense of determination filled the air. The Empire had struck a devastating blow, but they had also awakened something in humanity, a fierce, unyielding spirit. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but for the first time since the broadcast there was hope. The screen in the corner of the room flickered again, this time showing a live feed of protests and rallies erupting across the globe. People were taking to the streets, waving flags, chanting slogans of defiance. Hale watched, a grim smile on his face. "They've made their move," he said quietly. "Now it's our turn." The room buzzed with energy, each person contributing their unique skills to the mission. Dr. Ramirez was analyzing the Empire's technology, searching for weaknesses. Lila was refining her spacecraft design, her eyes alight with possibility. Jake was deep in the Empire's systems, planting digital traps and gathering intel. Hale stood at the center of it all, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders but his resolve unshakable. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and that would be their downfall. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Hale addressed the team one last time. "This is just the beginning. The road ahead will be long and hard, but we will not falter. We will not break. We will fight, and we will win." The team nodded, their faces set with determination. The Empire had made a grave mistake. They had awakened the fury of humanity, and there would be no turning back. The screen flickered once more, this time showing the Empire's insignia again. But this time, it was accompanied by a single word, scrawled across the bottom in bold, defiant letters: "Resist." Hale smiled. "Let's get to work." The underground facility buzzed with activity, a hive of determined minds and restless energy. Maps, schematics, and holographic projections covered every available surface. The air was thick with the hum of machinery and the occasional burst of heated debate. At the center of it all stood General Marcus Hale, his sharp eyes scanning the room as he coordinated the efforts of his team. Dr. Elena Ramirez was hunched over a workbench, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Fragments of alien technology, salvaged from previous skirmishes, were scattered around her, their intricate designs glowing faintly. "If we can reverse engineer their energy matrix," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else, "we might be able to create a cloaking device, something to get us past their sensors." Lila Chen, perched on a stool nearby, was sketching furiously on a tablet. Her designs were a chaotic blend of practicality and imagination, a spacecraft that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts, but promised to be faster and more agile than anything the Empire had ever seen. "We don't need to outgun them," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "We just need to outthink them." Jake. Wild card. Thompson leaned against a console, his fingers flying across a keyboard. Lines of code filled the screen in front of him, a digital labyrinth of traps and diversions. "I've got their comms network in my sights," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "Give me 5 minutes, and I'll have them chasing ghosts." Hale crossed the room, his boots echoing on the metal floor. "We don't have 5 minutes," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "The Empire's outpost on Mars is our best shot at getting the intel we need. We move now, or we lose our chance." The team exchanged glances, the weight of the mission settling over them. Dr. Ramirez straightened, holding up a small device that pulsed with a soft blue light. "Cloaking prototype is ready. It's not perfect, but it should buy us some time." Lila tapped her tablet, and a holographic model of her spacecraft materialized in the air. "The Starling is prepped and waiting. She's not much to look at, but she'll get us there." Jake slammed his laptop shut and slung it over his shoulder. "And I'll make sure the Empire's too busy arguing with itself to notice us." Hale nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "Then let's move." The Starling was a patchwork marvel, its hull a mosaic of salvaged materials and improvised repairs. It looked like it might fall apart at any moment, but as Lila piloted it through the atmosphere, the ship handled like a dream. "Told you she was special," Lila said, her voice brimming with satisfaction. Dr. Ramirez monitored the cloaking device, her brow furrowed in concentration. We're invisible to their scanners, but it won't last forever. We need to be in and out before they realize something's wrong. Jake, seated at a makeshift console, was already deep in the Empire's network. I've got their security. Protocols right here, he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Give me a second and I'll... Oh, that's interesting. What? Hale asked, his voice sharp. They've got an AI running their systems. Nasty piece of work. 2. It's already noticed the anomalies I created. We've got maybe 10 minutes before it locks us out. Then we move fast, Hale said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The Starling touched down on the Martian surface, its landing gear sinking slightly into the red dust. The team moved quickly, their movements precise and practiced. Dr. Ramirez led the way, her handheld scanner guiding them to the outpost's entrance. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Stay close, Hale whispered, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. We don't know what's waiting for us. The outpost was eerily silent, the only sound the soft hum of machinery. The team moved through the corridors, their footsteps muffled by the thick metal floors. Dr. Ramirez's scanner beeped softly as they approached a sealed door. This, is it? She said. The main data hub. Jake stepped forward, pulling a small device from his pocket. He attached it to the control panel, and after a few tense seconds the door slid open. Inside, rows of servers glowed with an otherworldly light. Jackpot, Jake said, his grin widening. But as the team began downloading the data, a low mechanical voice filled the room. Intruders detected, initiating containment protocol. The lights flickered, and the door slammed shut. Dr. Ramirez cursed under her breath. The AI, it's locked us in. Jake was already at the console, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm trying to override it, but this thing is smarter than it looks. Lila glanced around the room, her eyes landing on a ventilation shaft. What if we... No time, Hale interrupted. Jake, can you distract it? Jake's grin returned. Oh, I can do better than that. He pulled up a file on his laptop and uploaded it to the AI's system. The room was filled with the sound of static, followed by a series of bizarre, nonsensical noises. What is this? The AI's voice stuttered, its usual cold tone replaced by confusion. Classic Earth memes, Jake said, his grin widening. Let's see how it handles a taste of human chaos. The AI's voice became increasingly erratic, its responses disjointed and nonsensical. The lights flickered again, and the door slid open. Go! Hale shouted, ushering the team out of the room. They sprinted back to the Starling, the outpost's alarms blaring behind them. Lila fired up the engines and the ship lifted off just as a squad of Empire drones arrived on the scene. That was close, Dr. Ramirez said, her breath coming in short gasps. But as the Starling soared into the blackness of space, the mood on board shifted. Jake pulled up the data they had stolen, his expression grim. Guys, you need to see this. The screen displayed a map of Earth dotted with red markers. They're planning a full-scale invasion, Jake said. And it's not just one fleet, it's dozens. They're coming for us. Hale's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the screen. Then we'll be ready. This isn't over. The Starling hurtled toward Earth, its crew silent but determined. The Empire had underestimated them once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The Starling touched down on Earth under the cover of night, its battered hull reflecting the dim glow of emergency floodlights. The team stepped out into a world transformed. Cities that had once pulsed with life now lay in ruins, their skylines broken by the jagged silhouettes of fallen buildings. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the distant rumble of explosions. The Empire's invasion had begun. General Marcus Hale surveyed the devastation, his expression grim. They're hitting us hard, he said, his voice low. But we've got the data. We know their weaknesses. Now we use them. Dr. Elena Ramirez was already at work, her tablet syncing with the Global Defense Network. The flaw in their energy shields is real, she said, her fingers flying across the screen. If we can exploit it, we might be able to turn the tide. Lila Chen, her face smudged with soot, was studying a holographic map of Earth's orbital defenses. Our satellites are still operational, she said, her voice tinged with hope. If we can reprogram them to target the Empire's fleet, we could buy ourselves some time. Jake Wildcard Thompson, ever the provocateur, was already deep in the Empire's systems. I've got their command network in my sights, he said, his grin sharp. Let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine. Hale nodded, his mind racing. Ramirez, work with Lila to modify the satellites. Jake, keep disrupting their communications. We need to slow them down. The team sprang into action, their movements fueled by a mix of desperation and determination. Dr. Ramirez and Lila worked side by side, their combined expertise turning Earth satellites into makeshift weapons. Jake's fingers danced across his keyboard, his hack sowing confusion among the Empire's ranks. But the Empire was relentless. Their ships descended like a swarm of locusts, their weapons carving through Earth's defenses with terrifying precision. The team watched in horror as another city fell, its skyline consumed by fire and ash. We're running out of time, Lila said, her voice trembling. If we don't act now, there won't be anything left to save. Hale's jaw tightened. Then we act now. Ramirez, Lila, get those satellites online. Jake, keep them distracted. I'll coordinate the ground forces. The team worked through the night, their efforts a race against the clock. Dr. Ramirez and Lila finally managed to reprogram the satellites, their modified energy pulses targeting the Empire's shields. The first wave of attacks was a success. Several Empire ships faltered, their shields flickering and failing. But the Empire adapted quickly. Their ships began to evade the satellite pulses, their movements more calculated and precise. They're learning, Dr. Ramirez said, her voice tight with frustration. We need a new plan. Jake, his eyes glued to his screen, suddenly let out a triumphant laugh. I've got it. I've hijacked one of their drones. Let's see how they like fighting their own tech. The drone, now under Jake's control, turned on its creators, its weapons tearing through the Empire's ranks. The team watched as chaos erupted among the enemy forces, their formations breaking under the unexpected assault. But the victory was short-lived. The Empire's flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, entered Earth's atmosphere. Its presence was a grim reminder of the stakes. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. As the team regrouped, a message came through from the front lines. Colonel Daniels, Hale's second-in-command, appeared on the screen, his face bloodied but determined. We've got a problem, he said. The Empire's ground forces are advancing on our position. We can't hold them off much longer. Hale's expression darkened. Fall back, he ordered. We'll regroup and... No, Daniels interrupted, his voice firm. We'll hold the line. Buy you the time you need. Just promise me one thing. Make them pay. The screen went dark, and the room fell silent. Hale's hands clenched into fists, his grief and anger palpable. We're not losing anyone else, he said, his voice low and fierce. Not today. The team redoubled their efforts, their resolve hardened by Daniel's sacrifice. Dr. Ramirez and Lila refined their satellite strategy, while Jake continued to wreak havoc in the Empire's systems. Hale coordinated the global resistance, his leadership a beacon of hope in the chaos. As dawn broke, the tide began to turn. The Empire's forces, once unstoppable, were now faltering under the relentless assault. The team's ingenuity and determination were paying off, but the cost was high. Cities lay in ruins, and the death toll was staggering. But humanity was fighting back, and for the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. The Empire's flagship loomed over Earth like a malevolent moon, its shadow casting a pall over the battered planet. Its sheer size was staggering, a city-sized behemoth, bristling with weapons and shielded by layers of impenetrable energy. It was the heart of the invasion, the command center from which the Empire's forces were directed. And it was the team's target. General Marcus Hale stood in the war room, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the flagship. Around him, the team was finalizing their plan. It was a desperate gambit, a high-stakes mission that would either save humanity or doom it. But there was no other choice. "This is it," Hale said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of responsibility. "We take out the flagship and the Empire's chain of command collapses. We hit them hard and we hit them fast." Dr. Elena Ramirez adjusted her glasses, her expression focused. "The cloaking device is ready, but it won't last long under their scanners. We'll have a narrow window to board the ship." Lila Chen, her hands trembling slightly, held up a small device. "I've modified the energy pulse from the satellites. If we can plant this in their core, it'll overload their systems and take out the shields." Jake Wildcard Thompson leaned back in his chair, his usual smirk replaced by a look of determination. "I'll handle their systems once we're inside. If anyone can shut down their AI, it's me." Hale nodded, his gaze sweeping over the team. "This isn't just about survival. It's about proving that humanity won't be broken. No matter what happens, we fight for each other. For Earth." The team moved quickly, their preparations a blur of activity. The Starling, now outfitted with Dr. Ramirez's cloaking device, was prepped for launch. Lila's modified energy pulse was secured in a reinforced case, its faint hum a constant reminder of the stakes. Jake loaded his hacking tools onto a portable drive, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he prepared for the digital battle ahead. As the Starling ascended into orbit, the tension on board was palpable. The flagship grew larger on the view screen, its ominous presence a stark contrast to the fragile hope that fueled the team. Dr. Ramirez monitored the cloaking device, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We're invisible for now," she said, "but the moment we breach their hull, they'll know we're here." Hale gripped the back of Lila's chair, his eyes locked on the screen. "Then we make it count." The Starling approached the flagship's underbelly, its movements precise and deliberate. Lila guided the ship to a maintenance hatch, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is our entry point," she said. "Once we're in, we've got 10 minutes before the cloaking device fails." The team donned their gear, their faces set with grim determination. Hale led the way, his sidearm at the ready. Dr. Ramirez carried the energy pulse, her grip tight on the case. Jake slung his laptop over his shoulder, his fingers twitching as if already typing. Lila brought up the rear, her eyes scanning the corridor for any signs of movement. The interior of the flagship was a labyrinth of sterile corridors and humming machinery. The team moved quickly but cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick metal floors. Jake tapped into a control panel, his eyes narrowing as he studied the readout. "Their AI is tracking us," he said. "I'll try to slow it down, but we need to move fast." Dr. Ramirez pointed down a side corridor. "The core is this way. If we can plant the pulse, we can disable their shields." The team pressed on, their progress marked by the occasional skirmish with Empire drones. Hale's marksmanship and quick thinking kept them alive, but the odds were against them. As they neared the core, the AI's voice echoed through the corridors, cold and mechanical. "Intruders detected, initiating containment protocol." The lights flickered, and the doors began to seal. Jake cursed under his breath. "It's locking us out. I need to override the system." Lila stepped forward, her eyes scanning the control panel. "Let me try." Her fingers flew across the interface, her movements a blend of intuition and skill. After a tense moment, the door slid open, revealing the core, a massive chamber filled with pulsating energy. Dr. Ramirez hurried inside, setting the energy pulse at the base of the core. "This is it," she said. "Once it's activated, we've got 5 minutes to get out." Hale nodded, his voice firm. "Jake, shut down the AI. Ramirez, Lila, get ready to move. We're not leaving anyone behind." Jake connected his laptop to the core's systems, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The AI's voice grew more erratic, its responses disjointed and confused. "What Are you doing? This is unacceptable. Just saying hello, Jake muttered, his grin returning. Now how about a little nap? The core's energy began to fluctuate, the hum growing louder and more unstable. Dr. Ramirez activated the pulse, its countdown ticking away on the display. Let's go, she shouted. The team sprinted back through the corridors, the flagship shaking as the core destabilized. The AI's voice echoed behind them, its tone almost desperate. You cannot escape. The Empire will prevail. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. Keep moving, we're almost there. The Starling came into view, its engines already humming with power. The team scrambled aboard, Lila firing up the engines as the flagship began to collapse around them. The Starling shot away from the flagship just as the core exploded, the shockwave sending the massive vessel spiraling out of control. On Earth, the Empire's forces faltered as their command structure collapsed. The team watched from orbit, as the invasion fleet retreated, their ships scattering in disarray. For the first time in weeks, the skies were clear. Hale leaned back in his chair, exhaustion and relief etched on his face. We did it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Ramirez smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We showed them what humanity can do. Lila let out a breathless laugh. And we didn't even blow up the Starling. This time. Jake grinned, his usual swagger returning. Speak for yourself. I'm already planning the next hack. As the Starling descended toward Earth, the team shared a moment of quiet triumph. The road ahead would be long, and the scars of the invasion would take time to heal. But for now, they had won. And in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had proven its resilience, its ingenuity, and its unyielding spirit. The screen in Nye, the corner of the cockpit flickered to life, showing images of celebrations erupting across the globe. People took to the streets, their faces filled with hope and determination. Hale watched, a small smile playing on his lips. This is just the beginning, he said. The Empire thought they could break us. They were wrong. The Starling touched down, its crew stepping out into a world forever changed. The Empire had been dealt a blow, but the fight was far from over. And as the team looked to the stars, they knew one thing for certain: humanity would never back down.